thirst for hyper-local news. Broadcasting live online, this is Llanelli Talk Radio News.
Welcome along on the day that the Counsel General and Minister of the Constitution has given a speech at a virtual event at the Wales Governance Centre Constitutional Convention. He set out his vision for constitutional reform for Wales within the Union. We have in the studio Gwynoro Jones, who's going to guide us through some of what the Minister has said and the implications for Wales. Well, joining me in the studio now is Gwynoro Jones. Welcome, Gwynoro. A very important day for Wales here with this, something that you have been championing for many, many years, putting at the top of the agenda for the Counsel General. Just give us a sort of a brief outline of what you have got from the beginnings of this speech today.
Well, it's a very big step forward, a very important step forward. And if some people have got doubts about why he's doing it or he hasn't gone far enough, I would counsel at the moment that everyone accepts and takes this on trust as a starting point. It's the first level of discussing in Wales our future. Now, people can argue, you've got politicians, you've got political parties, they've been doing all that for many, many years, decades even. But the point being, we need to have a structure to the conversation. We need to have a structure to the way forward. What do the Welsh people want? What do they believe in? How far do they want Wales's voice to be heard? How powerful is that voice? At what level is it going to be from where we are now, with the Parliament as it is, to independence on the other extreme? But in between, you've got more powers for the Assembly, more tax-raising powers, more law-making powers, responsibility for the police and all that, or a federal structure within the United Kingdom, or a confederal structure, so many aspects to it. So what he's doing is setting up a pattern, if it were, to establish what do the people of Wales want? Are there common denominators, for instance? Are there things we can agree on? So it's the starting point. That's the essential thing.
You say that there are going to be a lot of people out there, particularly nationalists, particularly Yes Cymru and Plaid Cymru, who want this to go a stage further and have independence. But Mick Anthony has been very clear, surprisingly really, in this speech, and said Wales must have a stronger representation, and that representation is going to be firmly embedded in the union.
Well, yeah, look, that is what I was trying to say in my first answer. I honestly hope that no political party or no one, from the Conservatives, from the anti-devolutionists, from those who don't want the Assembly, to Plaid Cymru who seek independence and Yes Cymru, to have a static position at the moment. Let's have all the options on the table. Let the people of Wales talk about them openly. Not just about the Constitution, maybe many other issues as well, about that affect the Welsh people in general. So I don't want anyone, be it the Labour Party, even Mike Anthony, I don't want them to have a static position, he says, within the union. Well, that's fair enough. That is one aspect. But within that statement, what is meant?
Yeah.
There are 3 or 4 different levels of operating within that union. There are 2, 3 or 4 different ways of organising the UK on a union-wide basis within that. It's not simply, we want to be part of the union. You know, there are different levels to being part of the union. And that is what the discussion, that is what the Commission, I hope, will start talking about.
Wales is a nation of tribes, Gwynoro. There are tribes within tribes in Wales as well. Mick Anthony has correctly sort of set out that items like the furlough scheme, for instance, Wales would never have been able to cope with that, the financial implications. So I know what you're saying. There are pluses and minuses, aren't there, for remaining in the union and going independent. Just outline some of the pluses and minuses, if you will, then.
Look, can Wales go on its own is a major decision and a debating point where people disagree intensely on it, okay? It depends what you mean by going on your own in the first place. There is no reason why within the United Kingdom you can have a setup where Wales has a lever of power and decision-making way beyond what it has now. Tax-raising powers, decision-making powers, social benefits, social security, the police, on and on and on, many other aspects, justice. There is no reason why those things can't come to Wales within a pattern that we can afford them ourselves. Look, economists will argue, can Wales go it alone? Economists argue, look, Wales will be in the red. Hello? The United Kingdom is in the red at the moment, to the tune of 2 trillion. It's not a question of being in the red or can you afford it. It's a question how you structure your finances, how you structure your public spending. One classic example. Okay, he says we would not have managed without on the furlough. On the other hand, I can turn round and say we wouldn't be paying for HS2. HS2 is costing 200 billion, or whatever it is, of no benefit to Wales, but we have to pay through it by taxes. It's pluses and minuses. That's what I'm on about.
Scotland and Ireland have had a much stronger voice. They seem more dogged, in their dealings with Westminster, what they want, what they can have and what they demand, really. Is this Mark Drakeford's time? We can hear him, shouting from the sidelines and saying, look, we need a place at the table. We need to be taken seriously here. We need to be recognised for what we are achieving within Wales as a devolved government as part of the union. Johnson has the choice, doesn't he? He either gives Mark Drakeford a top seat at the table alongside, an equal sort of standing with Scotland and Ireland, or he continues down this path, and I guess the issue will be forced, and more people will jump on that bandwagon of saying, look, we're not getting anywhere with Westminster. We need to go it alone.
Yes, and that is what has happened in the last couple of years. This is what has dawned on Mark Drakeford. And I must here pay a great tribute to that man mind. You know what I mean? He is standing up. Whatever people think of Mark Drakeford, he is standing up for Wales and its corner now in the fight and the struggle with Westminster. Westminster accepted devolution. John Major, Blair, Cameron, Mrs May accepted the devolution settlement. Boris Johnson hasn't. He wants to undermine it. He wants to cut it back. He wants to get rid of certain powers. And Mark Drakeford, being on the inside of all these things, knows full well what is going on and is making his voice heard and has made this decision. Quite right. This is a sign to Westminster, look, if you think we are going to lie down, you've got it all wrong. We are going to set up our own commission. We are going to start looking at to how Wales should be governed, what Wales's position will be within the United Kingdom or without the United Kingdom. He's making his stall out, and for that, even the most bitterest opponent of his must accept that he's standing up for Wales in this.
And it's important here that, as you say, this should not be hijacked by any kind of, political agenda, nationalist agenda or anything else. What we have here from Mick Anthony is he's saying this needs to be a debate, a discussion that has been going for some time. There have been numerous reports on Wales's place within the Union and independence. And what he's saying here is we need to engage the citizens. And a lot of that really is down to, a conversation that needs to be had with the people of Wales. You've been party to that to a certain extent. Are you concerned that this will become a talking shop and sort of being handed over to minority groups within Wales? Or, are we going to see, I know what you champion really is, a debate within the 5 Senedd regions of Wales, panels of experts set up to have these discussions to contribute on behalf of the very different nature of the 5 separate regions of Wales.
Yes, well, first of all, they made this decision, and now it's got to be sorted out what are its terms of reference. What are the powers of the Commission? What is it going to look into? The experts underneath them, helping them out and feeding in information, they also must identify with the terms of reference the way ahead for the discussions. You can't have an open shop here. We can't have a talking shop here. There's got to be a structure to it. This is set up for a reason, and these are the reasons, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We're not going to go outside those areas with all sorts of other waffling talk and other discussions irrelevant. Now then, how do we structure it? Personally, I've just been thinking about it over the last hour or so. If you have a commission for the people of Wales, and they want to have as many participants from Wales into it, why not have subgroups of that commission representative of the 5 Senedd regions? And those subgroups can feed into the commission. Also, let's make it an open opportunity for anyone to submit their views, submit their recommendations. Political parties, civic societies, charities, the churches, individuals, people of no politics. Open it up and bring all these recommendations together within the terms of reference. Now, it's going to take about 18 months to 2 years, I suppose, to get all this going together. But it is possible. But we want to approach it in a positive way. I don't want to hear too many negatives from any politician in the next day or so, because I have experience going back many, many years. It took 30 years to arrive at 1997, when we had a Welsh Assembly. It started, and I was part of that, back in 1969. A discussion, working groups, evidence to a commission. And there you go. It actually took a long time. So people must understand this is going to take a while as well. And probably after the commission has had its first, I would assume, it's going to have a sort of report within about 2 years. But there will be recommendations within that report of how we go further. This commission can't be the end of it in itself. There will be something else, because it will come up with recommendations, whatever they are. Well, those recommendations have got to be hammered out as well at a later stage. So this is a process. It's a good process. But I don't want them to pack it. I honestly hope, but Mark, I don't believe he will do this. I don't want them to pack it with yes people. And I don't want them to pack it with people who are anti either. Let's try and have a cross-section of people in Wales of different opinions, bring them together. I'm a confederalist. I believe in 4 nations coming together, separate nations, but overarching that, there will be a sort of a council of the Isles of the UK on top of the nations being independent and free within a free union. A free union. Not top-down from Westminster, but the 4 nations agreeing to cooperate together and work together. Now, that is my view. Other people will say, no, we don't believe in that. We believe in a federal structure. Or others will say, no, we believe in leaving things as they are. Well, okay, let's talk it through, isn't it? I've had enough, really. I'm of an age now. I'm nearer 80 than 75. You know, mathematically, you can work that out yourself, Alan. I'm nearer 80 than 75. It's taken 50 years to get to this part. I want the next 5 to be more positive.
And the minister said that, this is it's come about as a result of, devolution as well. That has contributed. He ended by saying, I remain of the fundamental view that it's possible to renew and revitalise our union, convinced that we can find a way for it to thrive and prosper through a long term, not in spite of devolution, but very much because of it. Do you think we will then see some tactics come into play? Let's just look ahead. Boris Johnson, not as Prime Minister, forced to resign or whatever. This has a much more of a chance of achieving its goal should we have a general election and there is a Labour government.
Well, now this is one point that it might prove controversial for some people. As you know, and maybe we'll do a podcast of this sometime, I've just written a book with my friend Alan Gibbard on Who's Wales. And it doesn't matter where you look at, when it's come to the last 30, 40 years, what the Labour Party has decided matters. Because you quite rightly said there can only be a Tory government or a Labour government or a Labour-led coalition government with the Liberals and the SNP and the Greens. Those are the only two options. So it's important that in Wales, the Welsh Labour Party gets its act together. And now I believe Mark Drakeford has seen the light. I don't wish to be unkind to him or condescending. He realises he has a task and a responsibility, because at the end of the day, we've got to face Boris Johnson and his machinations.
You've alluded to your age, and I'm hoping you're going to stay around for another 20 years, so that you witness this change that you've desired for throughout your political career. Can you honestly see this happening now, where we have, responsibility and a much greater say in our justice system, our policing system, education, our health, the very fabric of our society, that these decisions really have come home to roost, that Wales and the Welsh Parliament has the clout, has the teeth, has the bite, as part of, as you say, this renewed and reinvigorated union? Or do you see it very much being Wales and England, with Scotland having gone, with Ireland having gone, that we are...
Well, that is the nightmare.
Yeah.
That is the nightmare. That is what Drakeford probably sees as a nightmare himself, right? See, the biggest problem with all of this at the moment is Scotland wants to go its own way. Doesn't want to be part of this union, along what Mick Anthony is saying now. You have Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland, who wants to join with Ireland. They don't want to be part of this UK union. There is that issue going on. And then you have Johnson saying, I don't want to give you any more powers at all. It's a big nightmarish situation for Mark Drakeford to be faced with. But what he's doing, and he's doing it right, we are taking the bulls by the horn, and we are going to try and establish what does Wales want. That is the point, and we will take it from there afterwards.
Well, there we are. That's been a fascinating, 20 minutes discussion really on what has been tabled today by Mick Anthony. It remains to be seen, as Gwynoro said, whether this will be a very expensive talking shop that ends up with a partnership between Wales and England, or if the same kind of, debate takes place and discussion takes place with the people of Scotland and the people of Ireland and the people of England. Let us not forget, we are talking about 4 of the nations here, and in order for anything to work, they will all have to have the same form of input. Let's see what happens. Gwynoro's prediction is that this will come about by hook or by crook, and he has, as we've heard, congratulated Mark Drakeford on very much taking the bull by the horns. Thanks for joining us. It's been a pleasure having Gwynoro Jones in the studio. Diolch, Gwynoro.
Hello.